Last episode, we discussed the Shema Kolenu blessing of the Amidah, a prayer that our prayers be heard. We said that it is the culmination of the Bakashot, the petitionary prayers, which constitute the second of the three sections of the Amidah. Now, as we turn to the third to last prayer, Retzeh, we're entering the final section. In the Jerusalem Talmud, Rabbi Acha teaches in the name of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, the first three blessings and the last three blessings are in praise of God. Shivcho Sham Makom. And the middle ones are the needs of the creations, Tzarchan Shel Briot. The Rambam, in his Mishnah Torah, labels the three sections similarly, with a bit of a difference though. The first three are Shevach, praise. The last three are Hoda'ah, or Hodaya, thanksgiving. And the middle ones have in them the requesting of all the things that are as categories for the desires of each and every person and the needs of the public in general. The Babylonian Talmud offers a colorful description. Rav Yehuda said, a person should never ask for their needs either in the first three or in the last three, rather in the middle ones. For Rabbi Hanina said, the first ones, like a slave who orders praise before their master, the middle ones, like a slave who asks for a reward from their master, the final ones, like a slave who received a reward from their master, and they take their leave and depart. So here we are, on the third to last bracha of the Amidah, just beginning the section of thanksgiving, according to Rambam, or the final section of praise, according to Rabbi Acha, or according to Rabbi Hanina. We are bowing our way out from our audience before God with gratitude after having our requests met. And there is a problem. The problem is that the language of our blessing sounds very much like another petition, another request. Retzeh Hashem Elokeinu, be pleased, Hashem our God. Ba'amcha Yisrael u'tfilatam, with your people Israel and with their prayer. Shevet ha'avodah livir beitecha, and restore your service to the Holy of Holies in your abode. Ve'ishei Yisrael tfilatam b'yahava tekabel b'ratzon, and the fire offerings of Israel and their prayers receive with love. And may you always find pleasure with the service of your people Israel. And may our eyes behold your merciful return to Zion. Blessed are you, God, who returns their presence to Zion. In some ways, this blessing sounds like a combination of the previous blessings. The last one requested that God hear our prayers, and the ones before that were requests for the messianic rebuilding and redemption. This one seems to sum up with a request that God accept not only our prayers, but our sacrifices in the restored temple, with God's presence restored. I'm afraid I don't have a definitive, convincing answer to why this prayer, which sounds so much like the petitions before it, is not classified along with them as another bakasha, another petition. But I do have a few ideas that I will share, and then I will share a few more thoughts about this tefillah, about this prayer in particular. Commentators on the Babylonian Talmud explain that Rav Yehuda's ruling that we are not to make requests in the first and last three blessings specifically refers to personal requests, whereas Rav Yehuda would say requests for the whole community are still appropriate, which is why we make them. Indeed, Rav Yehuda's phrasing, a person should never ask for his or her, their needs, does make it sound like he's talking about individual petitions. But still, why does the Jerusalem Talmud refer to them as praise and Rambam refer to them as thanksgiving? The Tosfot Harush, Rabbeinu Asher ben Yechiel's 14th century compilation of his teachers and their teachers, commentaries on the Talmud, explain that when a slave sets out praise for their master, they can ask for public needs, because the great are exalted and honored by the fact that many people need them. In other words, turning to someone, in this case God, to provide for an entire population is a form of exaltation or praise, shevach, of God's greatness. Similarly, when we make our communal requests, we can take the opportunity to feel gratitude that our personal needs are sufficiently met for us to be able to make requests beyond ourselves as well. Or we can feel gratitude that we have a community that we are making requests on behalf of. That way, our last blessings that sound like petitions can also be hodaya, thanksgiving. But this explanation is not completely satisfying because many of the middle petitionary prayers we have discussed are also communally focused. Prayers for righteous judges in society, for the ingathering of the exiles, for the rebuilding of Jerusalem, and for the sprouting of the final redemption are all hardly selfish, personal prayers. Perhaps there is a real opportunity for self-reflection in Rav Yehuda's teaching in the Talmud. We can recognize that when we express desires for broad repair in the world, and when we strive to effect that repair, we often have personal, self-interested motivations. And that's a good thing. The bulk of the Amidah, the central 12 out of 18 prayers, is meant to be a time for personal petition from God, including regarding general global matters. But Rav Yehuda teaches us that we also need to make a space inside ourselves in which we are really thinking only of others, of the whole community and of God, for their own sakes, not for how they relate to our needs and desires. The story about Rav Yehuda in the Talmud, that could be the story of how he learned to pray for the sake of others. In Masechet Ta'anit, we learn that Rav Yehuda once saw two people being wasteful with bread. Rashi explains that they were playing catch with it. He looked at them judgmentally and concluded that there is plenty in the world. A famine followed. The rabbis told the son of Rav Yehuda's assistant to have Rav Yehuda go to the doorway by the market. There, Rav Yehuda saw a big crowd of people and asked what they were doing there. They answered that they were all there for one container of dates, or perhaps even for the husks of dates. Rav Yehuda understood that there must be a famine in the world and instructed his assistant to remove his shoes so that he could begin to fast. As soon as he had removed one of his shoes, it began to rain. We see that as soon as Rav Yehuda was made to see the suffering of others, his slightest action was a powerful prayer to God. On the following page, the Talmud tells a similar story of a drought some generations earlier, in which Rabbi Eliezer prayed for rain at length to no avail. But when Rabbi Akiva, his student, prayed a single line, the rain began to fall. When the sages began to murmur about this occurrence, a divine voice proclaimed that Rabbi Akiva's prayer was effective not because he was greater than Rabbi Eliezer, but because he was more forgiving. Literally, he was ma'avir al midotav. He would pass over or overlook or forgo his own measures. He ignored himself in thinking of others, and his prayer was heard. We can have these teachings in mind as we use the Retzeh blessing to consciously switch from a mindset of private petition to a mindset of communal or global awareness, asking for God for the greater world, and in doing so, expressing gratitude and praise of the divine. In the Light Lab podcast, a podcast all about tefillah, which has its own series of episodes devoted to the blessings of the Amidah, Kentor Dreskin describes how in the Reformed tradition in which she grew up, they would say the first three and the final three prayers of the Amidah out loud as a community, and the intermediate ones silently to themselves. This way, she could really experience the change beginning with Retzeh. It seemed to be more of a communal prayer than the petitions in the middle, she says, which is exactly how the commentators interpret Rav Yehuda's statement. I have one more possible answer to the question of why the Retzeh prayer could be a thanksgiving prayer, even though it sounds like a petitionary prayer, which relates more to its specific content. This blessing includes requests that God receive our prayers, and that God restore the temple right, and that God receive our sacrifices. On holidays that would have had special festive sacrifices, we insert a special prayer here, that we be remembered with compassion. Hosea calls us to take words with you and return to God. Say, forgive all guilt and accept what is good. Instead of bulls we will pay, the offering of our lips. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says prayers were instituted to correspond to the daily offerings. And elsewhere in the Talmud, we learn that Abraham asked what will happen if his descendants transgress God's law. God reassures him that the sacrifices will expiate them. Abraham again objects. What about when there's no temple? And God reassures him, I've already established for them the textual order of the offerings. And when they recite from those paragraphs, it will be as if they have actually brought them as sacrifice before me. So this prayer is not just a prayer for the ability to make sacrifices. It's a prayer that stands in lieu of actually bringing the sacrifices. and those sacrifices include thanksgiving offerings. Indeed, in the future, we hope for, according to the Midrash V'yikra Rabbah, all the sacrifices will be canceled, but the Thanksgiving sacrifice will not be canceled. All the prayers will be canceled, but the Thanksgiving prayer will not be canceled. So the words of our prayer may be petitionary words, but they stand in for the service of bringing an offering that expresses gratitude. Some commentators understand the words of the prayer, Ve'ishei Yisrael utfilatam be'yahavat tikabel b'ratzon, and the fire offerings of Israel and their prayers receive with love, as meaning in the present tense right now, not only in the prayed for moment when the temple service should be restored. Jacob ben Asher, a German-born rabbi who lived and worked in Spain in the 13th and 14th centuries, the son of Rabbeinu Asher ben Yechiel, I mentioned earlier, wrote in his great legal compendium, the Torah, Ishei Yisrael, the fire offerings of Israel, even though now there is no avodah, no temple service, we pray about tefillah, prayer, which is instead of sacrifices, that it be received with desire before God. Alternatively, the Midrash says that Michael, the great angelic minister, offers up the souls of the righteous on the altar on high. And it is about that they instituted the words for Ishei Yisrael. Ishei Yisrael literally means the fire offerings of Israel, from Eish, fire. But Rabbi Yaakov ben Asher is apparently alluding to the fact that it could also be from Ish, person or man, or great person especially. The offerings of the present are ourselves, the inner fire within us that awakens our hearts to the service of God. And b'yahava, with love, compassionately, can refer in the sentence both to how we are offering ourselves and our prayers, and also to how we want them to be received by God. The fire within us has to be aligned with the goodness of the love of God for it to be received. It can't be a reckless fire. Personally, I feel in this prayer a real striving for communal closeness to God. The temple service is a spiritual vehicle for the whole nation or the whole world to achieve intimacy with the divine. The particular mechanism of animal sacrifices may not be what I think of as the pinnacle of the redeemed utopian world. Other aspects of justice and peace are more central to my strivings. But the vision of the temple service encapsulates a drive toward intimacy through action. I want us to have a relationship with God, intimacy with the ultimate good. And I know that such a relationship is realized through avodah, through work, through service, through acts that offer of ourselves, and through the reciprocated, loving reception of them that we pray for. Have a beautiful day.